Alrighty. Good morning, FSPA advisors and students. Welcome to the best of the best in design for 2020. I am advisor Courtney Hanks, and I will be trying to keep my dog off my lap. But I'm the advisor for UHS Press and Odyssey Yearbook at University High School. And I will be going through some of the designs that were submitted and received best of the best, and just what is really working within these pieces and how you guys can emulate this in your own publications. So design rules basically go the same between all publications. So you'll hear me say and kind of talk about the same things in each. We want to see a strong use of typography, a really good use of hierarchy, and just readability, allowing our readers to really access the information. One of the things I teach my students when I first teach design is that design is there to serve the content. So it is a service that is provided to the content that allows the reader to engage more with the content itself, and really bring it to life, give it more emphasis, illustrate it, all of those different things. So that's what we're going to be seeing on our best of the best, really good examples of times where design was servicing the actual content. So yeah, let's get started. All right, so the first submission here, you can see that there is a strong use of space. The text isn't super, super large. That can be an issue in some layouts and designs. Here it feels proportionate. The illustration is nice and large, creating dominance. We see a flow with some of the text and the different hierarchy established there. Size is one of the biggest and best ways to create hierarchy, telling us what we should look first. So a larger text is obviously going to be more drawing to the eye for the most part. So we see that in our headlines and the sizing down to the smaller text. All right, this is an excellent example of using a visual verbal connection in your design and layout to just engage the reader and give one more way to kind of emphasize the ideas that are taking place. So cutting it short, that's going to be the verbal. We are also seeing the actual slicing of that. I love the almost double verbal here of cutting it short. It's just in the fun play on words. We're seeing that design really kind of take that a second step. The pull quote in the center is working. I like how there's one of the other things you're going to talk about is layering of hierarchy. So not just making it a little bigger, but then even within that package. So even within right here, this little pull quote, we're seeing additional layering as the words are bolder and a different color. So those are two other strategies for creating hierarchy. The modulo section at the bottom where it's locking the look, I would have liked to have seen just a little bit of smaller packaging on this. That way the dominant story focus at the top would have been a little bit, more drawing to the eye than the bottom. The bottom feels a little heavy, but other than that, beautiful packaging, great use of color, great use of illustration. In this layout, we're seeing a really strong spacing. I love how they broke these paragraphs down into two columns on the left and right. I think that is really helping the reader to have a digestible amount of text at a time. We always want to make sure that our text isn't going too wide on the page as our brains, and a lot of this goes back to like psychology and how long we'll actually keep attention. Just really wide blocks of text we don't enjoy reading. Anything that looks like an essay, I always say, like those things are things that we want to break away from. People are not interested in that inherently. We are seeing some uses of color in here, headline, and of course hierarchy. The fun typography of hey, honey is really working here as well. So. All right, seeing a little bit more of that visual verbal again in the headline, caught in the stars. I especially like this little mod down here at the bottom with the planets. I think that is just a really sweet, well put together element. It is illustrating something and giving information, but it is also just really pleasing to the eye with the color palette selected. All right, still seeing that great typography at the top. great separation between elements, making it so it's easy to tell which sections are separated from each other and which ones go together. Headlines for anything that is a different topic or a different idea. And yeah, just a great use of space. All right, this is just a fun front page. I really like how the color is playing in, that we have a photograph, that we have an illustration. This feels like something that would change from week to week or month to month, however often they actually publish. I would like to see some play with typography at the bottom section, but for the most part, excellent front page. I also really like this one. I think that this header is interesting. It's got a really good hierarchy in terms of the text size and weight. The colors, they're doing a really good job on this page of just really limiting the amount of colors that are being used. It can be really overwhelming when you have different elements competing for the same space. With the blues being used here, it's those different shades rather than mixing in different colors is really effective. Definitely seeing strong hierarchy as we move through, the separation at the bottom with these little signs. It's just a cute little way to illustrate that idea as well. So great page. This is beautiful. This looks to me very professional, and I think that when I teach and when I look at design and when I'm trying to bring myself to the next level on something, I'm always going back to what are professionals doing? What are professional publications doing? Where do I see even emails, Instagram posts, the mailers I get in the mail? How are these things being put together and different strategies and things? These colors in the illustration here these look professional. They're very well done. The colors are amazing. I like this limited palette they selected and how they used it throughout. It really just makes us feel like that really well packaged design, which is another really important part of creating a design, is that everything feels like it belongs together. Like you want there can be separation and there can be differences, but it's nice to feel in a publication like everything's related to one another. And on this spread, we are seeing a strong connection from left to right, strong hierarchy, and then beautiful illustrations. This is also a nice example of hierarchy on a split page spread. These can be kind of challenging to space out and design appropriately. This does feel well organized to the eye, which is important for readability and reader service. The pull quote at the top, that great coloring between the headline, pull quote, the meet and greet, the gray boxes, all of this feels very sophisticated and put together. I think a little bit more treatment could have been done with the photography on the right-hand side to make that look a little bit more professional, but other than that, it's very well designed. Another example of amazing spread design, I think the headlines here are working really well for split ideas. Pull quote still looking great. Modular design feels strong, feels professional. We're seeing good column organization and a strong use of illustration. And lastly here, this sports image being layered with text. The text is still readable even though we are layering it. It's broken down into paragraphs. It feels appropriate. The photo itself does feel like it's framing the text, which is really strong. I also love this little cutout with the golf club and the legend. I just think that when you can take the opportunity to layer elements on your page and to do something kind of surprising, it just elevates the piece. All right, which brings us to mod design. So mod design, we see this in newspaper layout, we see this in yearbook layout. Mods are the additional step. They're another layer on the cake, or they're another way to provide coverage. So when we are designing them, we want them to kind of add that flavor and spice to this page. Here you're seeing how providing a colored background on a cutout can really package it in a way that feels more professional, coming again back to how do we make our pieces feel more like real publications, because they are. But yeah, this is a great way to do it. So we do this sometimes as well in my own publications. We just take those backgrounds, cut them straight out, stick them onto a color that's thematic, and it really elevates that piece into being something that looks much more put together. So there's that. We're seeing hierarchy throughout. So layering the hierarchy is so important. So we have a headline, we have a subhead, we have a byline, we have the names of the students. All of these things are getting different type treatment, and that type treatment is telling us what is more significant. So the quotes obviously are becoming the least significant in this, but we are getting everything else in a well-organized and easy to read way. It's just very neat. Okay, so this one, we have a headline, subhead. There's the 3 quotes from the students, lots of layering. So looking at the different type treatments used between all of those pieces and how that tells us that these are different pieces of information. So our brain is better able to understand it visually. Each one of these gets identified. There's the weight feels kind of balanced, which can be tricky in a piece that has so much black in it. Yeah, and everything's nice and lined up. All right, we're seeing that layering again here in this mod, which unfortunately, I'm sorry, it's a little pixelated. I think the original submission might have been a little tiny, but we're seeing that variation between sizing and weight of text, and then also color, and then even treatment, with some of it being outlines and some of it being with that shadowy look. Each cutout on this mod is anchored to a line. It's really important that when you guys are creating full cutouts like this, that you are finding a way to anchor them so they don't look like floating people. It's just one of those things you'll get dock points on every single time that you submit. All right, and then this mod design, we're seeing that headline treatment again, using some really interesting typography, which is just, once again, how can we get people to read the content? Design is there to service the content. So creating really interesting and beautiful typography for headlines is another way to draw people in. You can see it complemented by illustrations that feel like they're speaking in that same voice. The colors are also doing the same thing. We can see them echoed throughout with that light peachy pink and that black being layered. Lots of different variation in fonts and treatment and weight throughout. Tons of hierarchy. Layering that hierarchy within your mods, that's another way to just bring your mods to the next level. And we're seeing that exact same strategy again here because this is the same book. All right, looking at layout design. A spread needs to be designed all together, which I really think everybody knows by now, but sometimes I feel like we design each little tiny piece separately. They don't always come together the way that we would want. So this is a strong example of how these little pieces all kind of came together, how illustration can be used in yearbook. I think not enough books are using illustration. I think that it's a really great opportunity for yearbooks to step outside their comfort zones. So you can see the illustration being used here to kind of recreate the stage. It's very effective. It's also anchoring those cutouts at the top. It's, for all we know, maybe that photography wasn't super stellar on its own, and then they found a way to make it more interesting, to bring these people together so you can get them all covered at the same time. So it's an interesting usage of that illustration for that effect. The point in time mod on the bottom right, very well done. We're seeing that interesting mix of 2 different typographies with the script and a very bold sans serif font, and then those fonts being used throughout. So really looking for fonts when you're designing your theme package that complement each other, but also kind of create that voice. I always try to have at least 2 fonts for my headlines when we are choosing our theme, because it gives you more flexibility. It creates more variety within your book. It's just another way for you to have another tool to play with as you work into your design. So yeah, great hierarchy packaging here. I love the folio down here at the bottom right. That feels very sophisticated. It feels very well designed. All right, seeing that same font here, it looks like we have a slight even ombre to it, which is very pretty. I'm seeing that echoed up here in the top right-hand corner. Another thing I'm gonna note is just really how well the spacing is working. We are seeing a consistent space between the top and then the bottom, and then consistent spacing between elements. One of the things that I know was a rookie mistake for me when I started was that I just thought it needed to be, I use my rails, use my columns and rows, but I find that if you keep the space the same for each element on the whole spread, it makes everything feel more cohesive. You always want to be designing from the center, so we don't need to touch every single corner of the spread as long as we are keeping that spacing consistent. So really lots of space in the center that's pushing out your mods just makes everything kind of feel disconnected. So this is a really strong example of that, like this mod in this top right hand corner. We're not seeing it floating in space. It's really pulled into the design with a nice tight single row. All right, great use of a timeline in a spread. We have this fun quote packaging here. One of the things that I like to think about when we're developing our theme is, you know, how are we going to package our quotes? How are we going to package our captions? How are we going to package? And really just kind of coming down to the very nitty gritty of the hierarchy of each element. And doing that, it really elevates your work because you're not just figuring it out as you go. You've made a decision and you know you're going to do something like these blue oversized quotation marks. So those are working really well here. They're echoing. That's something I know I'll see again throughout the book. And they just add a little graphic element. All right, nice and seeing that consistent spacing between elements, not things just thrown all the way around the spread. Right, and this is a strong example of when you have multiple mods on a single spread. I know some yearbooks are designed completely like this. I know mine is not. I think it's a fun break away from having the typical large photos, but I do think you're just for like visual breakage, you need a combination of both of these. So having spreads that have large photography and having spreads that have this modular, more piece by piece design. I think everything feels very sophisticated. The one nitpicky thing I would have for this is that there's a pie chart on it. I don't like pie charts. I think anything that you do for your math class shouldn't be in the yearbook just because it reminds us of math class. But that is a nitpicky me thing. That is not a rule by any means. But other than that, we're seeing really strong usage of different things like polls. Notice that they are putting the date of the poll, the number of students polled. Those are really important for your journalistic integrity as a publication. Great usage of color. We're seeing that ombre look again, so I know that that is something they continued throughout their book, which is really lovely. All right, here we're seeing a cutout. We're seeing some of those layered elements. I really would be interested to see how this played out in an actual book being opened, but I think this is a fun way to approach something that's like TikTok, where it can be a little challenging to cover in a yearbook because it's something that happens while you stare at a phone. So they took some really interesting photography for this, taking this one shot and really blowing it up, using that cutout element with the layered colored background is really effective. And it's just a nice draw for your eye when you first land on the page, really knowing how to read. Remember, we talked about that in the beginning, that design serves our content, telling us where to go with our eyes. Here we know we're going to go in viral. We see that constant pull because the colors are so deep in this portion of the spread. All right, great mod design here. This all feels very fresh. Using the number as a way to anchor the cutout on the left-hand side, very effective. Lovely typography on that mod. Lovely typography for the headline, seeing that layer with that dominant where the green box is being pushed behind the dominant's head. Once again, finding ways to layer, finding ways to make things interesting and to surprise and delight your reader. All right, we have our runners here. They must have used this cutout to kind of isolate the subjects, which we would not have seen as much of had these not been cut out. Great headline usage. I really like this mod in this bottom left-hand corner where the person's kind of coming out of their box, and the color is just really lovely on it. Okay, so that's spread design. We're gonna just quickly pop through theme development and just looking at the design and how these things are put together. I only wanted to touch on this because I know as a new advisor several years ago when I first started out, this was something that kind of eluded me. I didn't really understand how design worked when it came to the theme elements. So we're just going to quickly go through some of these as well. So first you have your cover. This is University High School, so this is my school, but We did 3 covers this year. We did pink, green, and orange for our covers. It is our 10-year anniversary, so it felt like a special year to do something kind of different. Theme phrase. The kids chose to do this like grungy look because they wanted to do something kind of with an attitude to it. And so that's kind of where they came up with that verbal. But when we get to the cover and my kids start designing it, I want to see, you know, a majority of the things that I'm going to see inside the book. So this is really where I acquaint my reader with the expectations. So I want to see as much as possible of the echoes of the inside of my design. So you can see that with the echo text at the bottom. You can see that with the fonts that are on here. You can see that with the colors that are on here. You can see that with things like the dotted box. All of our fonts that we use in the entire book on the cover. It was just really important for us to layer all those things together. You can see the spine has our city, state, the name of the book, the year, the volume number, the name of the school, and then we also include our theme phrase, which is optional on the spine. Right, and then we move into the end sheets. So the front end sheet, I'm a big believer in reader services. I want to see things like page numbers to different sections of the book. This is highly helpful when a student picks up the yearbook. We do not organize our book in chronological order or by section. It's all kind of, it's like a loose chronological umbrella. It's its own thing. It feels very organic to the year and the experience that the kids have, but as a way to help navigate, if you are in theater and you want to go find theater, we definitely include this every single year to enter our end sheets. Also seeing those echoes again of colors, the fonts, the grunge look that you're going to be seeing, type treatments, all of that. And then you get to your title page. When you're designing your title page, always make sure that you are doing something, that feels fresh and different from the year before. These are single page designs. We almost never design in a single page in yearbook, so they kind of end up looking the same over time because they all have to have the same stuff on them. They're the only single page in the book. Push yourselves, push your kids, try to do something that feels different year to year. So this year we did this full blood photo that the girls found when they were going through. I love how they use the dotted boxes as a way to kind of isolate our subject in the center here. We have a caption. Always caption your photos, even if they're on theme pages. And then notice that the school's information is nice and tiny next to the theme phrase. I don't want to see giant text on this. We want to make sure that we're seeing it proportionate, you know, like the rest of the book would be. It doesn't need to be massive to fill up space or anything else. It just needs to be there in case somebody wants to know that information about your school. Opening spread. So once again, you can see if you go from the cover to the end sheet to the title page and now to our opening, that these things all feel like they're part of the same family, and we're really acquainting them visually with the packaging. So aside from all the verbal, which I'm sure somebody else will talk about in a theme presentation, the visual needs to feel connected. It needs to feel related. We want to see those echoes of the same things we're going to be seeing on the rest of the book in these pages. All right, and we always try to save our best photography for these, just so that way we can really have them blown up nice and large, creating this more intimate look into the students, but also you just want to create a showstopper. You want some of your spreads to stand out differently than other spreads. You want to have that visual variety in your book, and your openings and your dividers are another way to create that variety. All right, this is our divider spread. So once again, using cool shots that we find while we're going through photos, lots of emotion and interest in these, and just really looking for spreads with a lot, photos with a lot of visual interest. Like here, we're seeing a lot of depth. So nice and blown up. And then I just included a regular spread so you could see how those things would move into a spread once you got into it. How this is, obviously very similar to a regular gut spread, but you can see those different theme elements being echoed in here that we saw in those other spreads. So our design needs to carry from that beginning into each page, all feeling connected and like it's telling the same story. All right, there's a closing spread doing the same thing. And then our back end sheet. Okay. All right, so then here is another theme package. This one is from HB Plant High School. So it's this wonderful script font with a serif font. What's it gonna take? We're seeing all of the same things that we just saw in our book on the spine. So the 2020, the name of the book, Panther, where they're located in Tampa, Florida, the theme phrase, the volume number, all of those things need to be on the spine. I think it's becoming more common for people to put their theme phrase on the spine. It's nice for us to differentiate year to year, because I know in my school, like at least in the yearbook classroom, we refer to our books by their theme phrase, not their year. So you can always slap it on there. If you don't want to have it on there, you don't have to. And then the theme phrase in the front with the name of the yearbook and the year. All right, and then getting into end sheets where they have their sections shown, and echoing those same things that we saw on the cover, bringing us in, giving us more exposure to the theme. And then getting into that title page. So once again, this is the one time we see that single page in the yearbook, aside from the very last page. So we're seeing a really strong layout here, really large theme phrase, but the rest of the school information nice and small. So same thing that we saw before, we want to make sure we're doing that. And they're also including captions for all these photos. So do not neglect your theme pages just because they are theme pages. These still need to have captions in them. And personally, when I have my students interview for these, I try to make sure that they gear the interview to even give us a kind of a thematic echo or feel to them. All right, coming into an opening. All right, so it's big photography, lots of text, really seeing that typography shine here. And that typography is going to be what really ties this book together. The folio is beautifully crafted with that script and the sans serif again. All right, coming into a regular gut spread. So you can see the different ways this would play out in a gut spread. So seeing the same typography, seeing how they choose to package it on an actual spread. Very strong use of spacing, very strong use of hierarchy. Our headline is nice and big. We have a dominant image. Our subheads are smaller than the original headline, and it's working together. All right. Which brings us to our last theme package, a very different feel. So all three of these are very different from one another, which is good because that means that us as schools are doing a great job of listening to our student body, listening to our year, and really trying to create a book that reflects that. So here is the Hillsborough High School 2020 in Tampa, Florida, so another Tampa book. And their theme was It Be Like That Sometimes. And they've got lots of cool graphics, lots of bold colors. And we're gonna see these echoed as we move into the table of contents. The title page. Right here we have, is this an opening? It's either an opening or it is a divider, but I think it's an opening. Oh gosh, I keep forgetting every time I hit that back key, it takes me all the way back. All right, so here's clearly a divider. Using really strong photography, they're using this element of illustration. So with like the actual marker on top of the page, black and white photography with the red accent. So really keeping that in every single divider and every single theme page, creating that sense of consistency. Okay. All right, and now we're in a regular spread, seeing how that plays out here. We're seeing the same graphic elements again. We're seeing the same fonts, the same color schemes. And that's all coming together to create the cohesive look of the page. All right, and that is everything I have for you for Best of the Best of Design. Hopefully you learned a little something about it. Hopefully it wasn't too boring. Unfortunately, a lot of hierarchy is just learning the vocabulary. So if you don't already learn about hierarchy in your journalism classes, I highly recommend spending some time just reviewing how those different strategies can improve your overall design and your overall readability. Thank you for watching and participating with me today. I hope you learned something, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the convention. Bye.